Okay, so this is the shir in the Idra Zuta, which there's a meaning to learn this on lagbomer night, and the reason is, of course, because it talks about the Petir of Rebbe Shimon bar Yochai and the Torah that he revealed at that time. Most of the Arizal's Kabbalah is based on the Inyunim that Rebbe Shimon revealed in the Idra Rabbah and the Idra Zuta. Those are the only places where there's, or one of the only places where the Zohar talks very clearly about the Partzifim. Much of Zohar can be learned al the old Kabbalah of the Ramak and the other Mekabulim who didn't have the concept of Partzifim and they only learned about the spheres as individual koiches. But these parts were always a mystery before the Rizal was Megala his Torah and explained what these things really are meant to be talking about. These are some of the niyum that we have here. So this year is going to go on as long as people are online. So we can go through as much as we can get through, and as long as someone's still on, we can still learn. And if anyone wants to log off at any time, then that's totally fine too. So if you have it in the Muslig Midvash, it's on page Shin Tzadik Ches. I think on the email it says Shin Tzadik Tes, but it's actually Shin Tzadik Ches in the Muslig Midvash. And it's on page Rashpai Zayin Omid Bais in the old print, the Zohar on Devurim. So the third Chaylik in the old print, in the Vilna print. And then I sent out online. I sent out a thing for those that don't have the actual text, where I found the text online. So that's on the website. So I hope anyone who needed that downloaded that. So it says like this. It says Tana. We learned Bahi Yoima the Rebbe Shimon Bur Listaklev in Alma. On the day that Rebbe Shimon came to be nifter from the world, to leave the world, Al Masader Mila, he was preparing everything for his petira. Kanchi Chavraya Levai Rebbe Shimon, the Chavraya, which are the Talmidim of Rebbe Shimon, who went to Rebbe Shimon's house. Of Habbe Kamei, Rebbe Luzer Bra, Rebbe Luzer was in front of him. Rebbe Abba was probably after Rebbe Luzer the most significant person here, because Rebbe Abba was the one who was actually writing down what Rebbe Shimon was saying. So in the sense that the Zohar, or at least the parts of the Zohar the Zohar has many different sections, but the parts of the Zohar that are the words of Rebbe Shimon were written by Rebbe Abba, and here we're going to see that he's writing these words here too. So they were all there, and V'havamalia Baisan, and the house was full of people. Actually, there was 10 members of the Chavraya. But then 3 of them passed away during the Idra Rabbah experience. So such an intense spiritual experience that they passed away. There's other Talmidim or other tzaddikim mentioned the Zohar as well, but these 10 were the main Talmidim. And then it said that the Rizal also had 10 Talmidim. And the Rizal, and it says in Sharga Gilim, it says that, wasn't it Sharga Gilim? I think so. I saw recently that when what's it called? When the Rizal would go to Reb Shimon's Kaiver in Meron, then they would, with the Talmidim, he would them according to the Talmidim of Reb Shimon. So the Rizal would sit at Reb Shimon's place, and he put Reb Chaim Vital in Rebbe Luzer's place, so on and so forth. So the idea is that potentially could be that the Talmidim of Reb Shimon over the Rizal were actually Talmidim of Reb Shimon. I'm just muting everyone because I'm hearing just some background noise. Don't get offended. And if you want to say anything, you can unmute at any time. Okay, so that's what it says. It says, Zukav Ein Reb Shimon raised his eyes. V'chama desmali baisa, he saw the house was full. Bocha Reb Shimon, he cried. V'omar. V'zimna achra, the other time, kadavayna v'bai marai, when we were in the threshing house, which was where the Idra Rabbah took place. Right, Hava Reb Pinchas ben Yuer Kamui, Reb Pinchas ben Yuer was before me, and of course, Reb Pinchas ben Yuer was Reb Shimon's father-in-law. Just checking. Right. Okay. So then he was there. And until I picked my place, meaning the place in Gan Eden that he was going to, Reb Shimon was going to go, to the Bes Medrash of Achia HaSheloini, which is where Reb Shimon learned after his Petira. Even beforehand, he was already preparing his place there. By the way, I'm just seeing over here that the Baimare doesn't mean the Rabbah. I'm seeing just in the Muslim Midvash that it means when Rebbe Shimon was sick, and that was mentioned in the Zohar Chudash and Parshas Brayshas. Okay, but anyway, so then Reb Pinchas Bar Yur was there to visit Reb Shimon when he was ill, and Reb Shimon thought he was going to be nifter, so he's already preparing his place in that world. This Arichili ad hashta, but they allowed me to stay alive until now. So Reb Shimon didn't. Reb Shimon thought then that he would pass away, but he didn't. V'chad tavna aschar aisha mekamui, and when I was sitting, or when I was returning from Gan Eden, looks like he actually had a out of body experience there, and he actually went up to Gan Eden. And then when he returned, it says Aschar Aisha Mekamui, there was a fire that was surrounding Reb Shimon. Im Alman Lo Yispasek, and that fire never went away. They have a ul barnash el bereshisa, and nobody could go up except with permission, and it means to Reb Shimon's house. In other words, where Reb Shimon was, there was this huge Rachnizdek of fire around, and nobody could approach without permission. But now I see that fire has stopped. Yosef Shimon sees that he's weakening, and that spiritual fire that he had is no longer there. And everybody came into the house. They didn't have to get permission to enter the house. So in other words, Reb Shimon saying that he sees that it's getting close to the end. So it says, while they were sitting, Pusach Eine Reb Shimon opened his eyes, and he saw what he saw. Which I guess we're not going to see what it was that he saw. He saw some kind of a Rachnizdika Gili. And then the fire again spread around the house. Nafikili, everybody left because of the fire now returned. And only Rebbe Luzar and Rebbe Abba remained in the house. And the other Chavarim were sitting outside. Rebbe Shimon said to Rebbe Luzar, his son, Pik Chazi, Rabbi Yitzchak. Go see if Rabbi Yitzchak is here. He was one of the Chavraya. The Anu, Maravnolai, because I am like an Urev with him, like a Shitav with him. Amalai, the Yisadamilai, tell him to prepare his things. V'yaisav legabu, and he should sit here, Zaku Chilkai. It seems that Reb Shimon is taking him to Gan Eden with him, because he's also going to pass away now. Because I guess since Reb Shimon promised Rabbi Yitzchak that he would go with him to Gan Eden, so now Reb Shimon is passing away. Rabbi Yitzchak should also prepare for this as well. Come Reb Shimon stood up, the Yosef, and then he sat down. He laughed and he was besimcha. Umar an in Chavraya, where are the Chavraya? Come Rebbe Luzar v'ayloin. Rebbe Luzar went and brought them in, even though the fire had returned, so they couldn't come in without permission. Since Reb Shimon now gave permission, and he told Rebbe Luzar to bring them in, now they can come in. Yosef Kame, they sat before him. Zukov Yudoy, Reb Shimon raised his hands of Matzlit Sloisa, and he davened, he prayed a tefillah. Havachudi was besimcha v'umar inin Chavraya. Idra is now all those chavarim that were by the Idra are now here. Nafke Kila, they all left. Bishtar Rebbe Luzar, Brian Rebbe Luzar stayed there. Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Hida, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chia. So in other words, everybody else left. Only the ones that were at the Idra were supposed to remain. So that was Rabbi Shimon himself, Rebbe Luzar, Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Hida, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Chia, and Rabbi Yitzchak also. So now Rabbi Yitzchak came in. These are the 7 that remained from the Chavraya, from the Idra. Rabbi Shimon said to Rabbi Yitzchak, Kama yuas chilka, how great is your chaylik, your portion. Kama chaydi bue letoisfo loch b'hai yoima, how much simcha is now going to be added to you on this day. It's interesting that Rabbi Shimon is about to pass away from the world, and so is Rabbi Yitzchak, right? And Rabbi Shimon is telling Rabbi Yitzchak that this is such a great day, such a simcha. And we call the Petira of Rabbi Shimon the Halila. Halila literally means like a chasana, right? Because for a person that understands what's going on, when they move on to that next plane of existence, that's something that's very great, and not anything to be afraid about or to look down about. Yusuf Reb Abba Busar Kisfoy. Reb Abba sat behind Reb Shimon's shoulders. Reb Eliezer came, and Reb Eliezer sat in front of Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon said, Hu hashta shata derisahi. It's a great eisrutzen now. On the be'ina lemayel beloy kasif al. I can now go without any shame to the next world. Umilan kadishin beloy gilion ad hashta. And now holy things I wasn't able to reveal until now. Be'ina legala kameshchint. I can now reveal them now here before the shchina. Lo yamrin dehu begriisa stalkam alma. No one should say that I went out of this world in a low kind of a way. Ad kan tmirin have bilibu, and until now there was things that were concealed in my heart. The mild bihi alma dose. Now with these things I can rise up to the next world. Asad asadrna lechi. Now I'm going to present them before you. Rabbi Yichtla, Rabbi should write. Rabbi Luzer Yilai and Rabbi Luzer should read, I guess, to proofread what Rabbi was writing, I guess. Yeah. And Vishar Chavraya Yachshin Belibai, and the other Chavrayim should be silent in their hearts. Come Rabbi Abba Mibasar Kasar, Rabbi got up from behind Reb Shimon. Yusuf Rabbi Luzer Brai Kame, Rabbi Luzer sat in front of him. Omer Lai, Rabbi Shimon said to Rabbi Luzer, Kimbri, get up, my son. To Achura Yusuf Bahiyasar. There's someone else that's sitting in that place. In other words, it says in the Muslim Gudvash, this means that there's a neshama from Gan Eden, a neshama of a tzaddik, that came down to be at this occasion, and that neshama was there where Rabbi Luzer had chosen to sit. So Shimon told him, don't sit there because someone else is sitting there, someone you can't see. So come Rabbi Luzer got up. Yes, Atav Rabbi Shimon was misativ himself. He cloaked himself in his talis. Yusuf, and he sat. Pusach V'omer, and he opened and he said, Lo yamaisim yahal dika v'lo kol yordai dimu. Right, Pusach in Tehillim. Lo yamaisim yahal dika uchi vadai. This is for sure like this. In and dikrin maisim, people that are called maisim. Right, because Pushib Shad and Pusik, it looks like the dead cannot praise Hashem, and not those that go down into Gehenna. Right, but l'chayr it's a pele, because why can't the dead praise Hashem? We know that there's life after death, right? So Rebbe Shimon says that the pshat in Pusik is it's referring to those that are called dead, even though they're not necessarily physically dead. And as he explains, Ukitchabrichi Chaikre Hashem is called alive. And he dwells among those who are called alive. Not among those who are called dead. So the Kruk in the last and the end of the Pusik says, not those that go down to Gehenna. We call in the Nachsin, the Dimud, all those ones that go down to Gehenna, the Gehenna Mishtuan, they remain in Gehenna, Shani in the Kin Chayim, the Kitchabrichi Boy Bekarayhain. So there's a difference between those that are called dead and those that are called alive. So in the sense that this is like Chazal say that the Rishum, even B'chaim Nikrim Maisim, right? And the Rishum are called Maisim even when they're alive, because like we talked about, life is a process, and life is part of an avodah that we have, an avodah to keep growing and trying to rise to higher midragas and trying to do our part in Hashem's plan for the universe. And those that aren't doing that, their lives aren't really nechshav, aren't chushav anything, and they're called dead. Like Rav Nachman says in the Torah that we just learned in the Kitamran last week, right, where he talks about this inyan, that until a person does tshiva, the reason why tshiva is associated with Hashem Ekia, the name Ekia, the word Ekia literally is future tense, means I will be, right? And the idea is that someone who hasn't done tshiva yet, he hasn't even started to exist in a real sense, because he hasn't started doing his part in the void of the universe, because it's as if he's not alive, as if he doesn't exist. So that's the idea here. So Rabbi Shimon said, Kama Shanya Shata Dome Idra. This time now is so different from the Idra, referring to the time of the Idra Rabbah. The Idra is Daman Kitchabrichi Veresicho. At the Idra, Kivyuchol Hashem was present with all of his forces, armies. Shalom Reb Nissim. See you.
Chag Sameach.
Okay. So what's it called? So Hashem was there with all his forces. Fashto Kitshabrichi Hucha, and here Hashem is here. And he came here with the tzaddikim from Gan Eden. Madloi, Yerui be'idra, those tzaddikim that weren't present at the first Idra, the Idra Rabba. The Kitshabrichi Bui Bekarayan, the tzaddikai, and Hashem wants the covet of the tzaddikim, Yatrim Mikura Dela, even more than his own covet. Like we have by Yerovam. Yerovam was, of course, the evil king who murdered a lot of people and a lot of the Nevi'im and was over the way to Zura. There's the Hava Mekater Mefalach Lavayda Zura. He burnt Ktoiras and he did avoida for Chas Shulam for Avodah Zura. The kid Shabrichi Oirich Lai, and Hashem forgave him for that. Hashem didn't make an Isaac out of that. We give him the Oishad Yidai Likiblai the Idai Nevi, but when he raised his hand to strike the prophet, the Nuvi, Idai, then like it says over there in Tanakh, Yisyav Yidai, his hand dried up in the air before he could strike him. Like it says in Pusi, that his hand dried up. All the Plach Lavayda Zura likes it. It doesn't say that his hand dried up or any other punishment for serving away the Zura. But since he raised his hand to strike Idai Hanovi, because of that he was punished. So we see that Hashem cares about the covet of the tzaddikim more about his own covet. And now here Hashem is coming now for our covet. And all of these other tzaddikim from Gan Eden are coming with him. Omar, he said, Rabbi Hamnina Sova is here, who was a big tzaddik, and it's mentioned many times in the Zohar, who was one of the tzaddikim from beforehand. He was already nifter. At this point, he appeared. The neshama was there at this occasion. And around him were 70 tzaddikim. Glifan be'itrin, they were crowned with crowns. I have here just a note. We have this idea that Lusad Luvoy, tzaddikim Yoshim v'Tresayim Bereshayim, Benhen Neziv Ashchina. Right, so it's interesting that the tzaddikim here are also crowned with crowns, a similar allusion to there. V'naran kol chad v'chad mezihara deziva d'Atika Kadisha. All of them were shining with the light of Atika Kadisha, of the highest oilam, of the highest parts of Atzilas. Stima dechol stima, which is concealed of all concealed things, the most concealed. V'hi usil lemishma bechedvasa ilain milin da'ana aima, and Hashem, that Kavuchel, the parts of Arach Anpin, is here to be part of that simcha of these words that I'm going to say. Adayav Yusuf, while he was sitting, Omar, he said, Pinchas ben Yura is here. I'm not sure if he was nifta already at this point. Yeah, that's what it says. That's what the Muslim Dvash says, that Pinchas ben Yura was nifta already also, Rebbe Shimon's father-in-law, and his neshama also came down at this point. Askini Dichtai, prepare a place for him. Is Daz the Chavraya, the Havataman, and all the Chavrayim that were there got all shaken up. That the Pinchas ben Yura's neshama is now coming to visit them. And they came and they sat and they stood up and they sat at the corners of the house, at the edges of the house, right? Because they saw that all these neshamas are coming in. They didn't want the same thing to happen to Rebbe Loser, that he sat in someone's place. So it became a whole Isaac. So they went to the corner of the house. They shouldn't sit in any place that's reserved for any of the tzaddikim from Gan Eden. Rabbi Loser, Rabbi Abba Yishtuari Kama, and Rabbi Loser and Rabbi remained before Rebbe Shimon. Rebbe Shimon said, Ishkachnu, the Chol Chavraya have a Omre. At the first Idra Rabba, all of the Chavayim were all speaking and saying their pieces. And I was also saying my piece along with them. Now it's only I'm going to speak. The Kilit Saisin, the Melila Elu and Visatu, and they should all hear these words, the high words and the low words, Zaku Chiluki Yom Adain. Blessed is my portion on this day. Pusach Rebbe Shimon, Rebbe Shimon opened and he said, Ani ledoidi v'ulai tishikusai, right? Pusach and Shirim, I am to my beloved, and upon me is his desire. Kol yomin de iskatrno b'hai alma, all the days that I was mikasher to the olam agashmi, right? B'chad katira iskatarna by begetchabrichi, I was still bound by a binding, by a kesher to Hashem. And we can call hashta v'olai tishikusa. That's why now I see that his desire is upon me. Dihi v'chol siyata kadisha delay, that kavyuchal Hashem and all of his siyata kadisha, all of the maluchim, usile mishma bechedva milayin steam, and they have come now to listen with joy to the concealed words that I'm going to say. V'shvucha datika kadisha. So now here starts the ideas that Rebbe Shimon is talking about. The shvucha, the shvach, the greatness of Atika Kedisha, stima they call stima, the most concealed of all, purish visparish mikoila. It's separated and divided from everything. In other words, here we're starting now his idea about Atika Kedisha, and he learns here, the Musaf B'Davash learns that we're talking about Odom Kadman, or Ak, which is the highest parts of. Usually, I think Kedusha refers to the parts of Arich of Atzilus, which is the Keser, the highest aspect of Atzilus. I suppose that probably could be learned on a number of levels. But the Muslim Davash learned is talking about Udam Kadman. They parallel each other, right? Because Udam Kadman out of the Oilimus is like the Keser, because the four Oilimus are Atzilus, Bri, Yetzira, Asiyah. Then the Udam Kadman is like the fifth above all four, which would be like the Kitzer Shalid, like the B'chinas Keser. And then in Atzilus, you have the five Pratzifim, because you have Abba and Imma are like the Yid and the Kai, like Chachman Ben, and then you have Zer Anpin and Nikve are the seven lower spheres, and then the Keser would be parts of Arich. So I think you can learn this on either level. But Al Kapunim, but he says, because now he's talking about Al Kapunim at a very, very high level, and he's saying it's Tim D'chal Stim, and it's the most concealed of everything, because the furthest from us. Really, be'emes, since our physical world is only the Malchus of Asiyah, like the way the Delashim puts it. So because of that, everything else is really concealed from us. We can grasp it to a certain extent, but this is so high, there's almost nothing to grasp there. And in Eitz Chaim, there is many times when he's talking about Ak for sure, and even when he's talking about Arich and Atik and Arich, he doesn't like talking about them much because he says that we're dealing here with very, very high places. So a lot of times he says, like, I'll talk about a lower level, and you can understand from there what's happening on the higher level. He doesn't want to talk about it directly. Right, so this Atikadisha is concealed, more concealed than everything, and it's purish in a sense. It's separate from everything in the sense that it's so completely so distant, right? If you think about it, even our physical universe, which is just the malchus of Asiyah, think of the distances there between all different stars and planets, right? And how great the universe is physically, and that's even just one little aspect. And then we're talking about spiritual elements, which are behemoths, whether they have physical space or not. In some sense, they're extremely, extremely far from us and extremely separate from us, right? So that's the intention here. This is the furthest away. He says, but be'emes it's v'loy purish, but be'emes it's not really separate, chas v'shulam, because the whole system is one chain and everything is connected, and you can't even have such a thing that it would be separate, because the way to visualize it is like a large system of wires coming from a generator, kaviyuchel, which is connecting to all different types of appliances and different types of sub outlets, and things are connected to other things. So if you cut off that wire anywhere in between, you cut off the entire system. Everything dies, everything dissolves, because it needs to have that constant flow of chiyas, right? So because of that, there's no such thing as a real separation, right? He says the whole koila by mizdabkan, everything is attached to it, right? The mizdabik koila, and this bechin of atik or ak is connected with everything. And it really is everything, in a sense, right? Even like we talked about by the shir, and the idea of this lapses of the oilamas, the way it works is is that the oilmas are enclosed one upon the other. So really, even though here we're in the lowest oilam of Asiya, but at least in the way of looking at the oilmas like eslabshus, you have all the oilmas right here. They're just they're more panimi, they're more internal. Our world is most external of them. But if we were like kiviyuchel, to have like some kind of a kiviyuchel, some kind of rachasdik knife, we would just cut the air in front of us. We could peel back layers upon layers upon layers. All the oilmas are right here. Everything is connected and everything is one. And really, according to the Rizal, the whole inyan of the oilmas is that Hashem created a mukampuni, Hashem created an empty space, kivyuchel, which means that he had to conceal his or, because none of the oilmas could exist because of the greatness of his or. So kivyuchel, there was this mukampuni, this empty place that the Ein Sof created, and then he put in a kav of his or into that, and as that kav expanded, the light from that kav created all the oilamas, right? So the idea is that really all the oilamas are made up of that same or Hashem, the same or Ein Sof. It just, as it got further away from the makor, it got more gas, as the Rizal puts it. It got thicker, right? But it's still all the or Hashem. So really, this high level we're talking about here, this level of ak is really everything, because everything is connected to it, and everything's part of one system, and everything parallels it too. Because kol mashesh b'klal yesh b'prat. So that ak, that structure, that ak is going to be the structure of every oilam, and of every single thing inside that oilam. And the reason why it's called udum kadmon is because our structure, the human structure, is based upon that structure too. So we're like the lowest revelation of that structure of ak. So it's all one. So he says, Atika dechol atikin, this concealed of this ancient of all ancients, this first emanation, steam dechol steam, the most concealed of everything, yistakan v'lo yistakan. Kivyuchol, it's misakin in the sense, it's misikin in the sense that it's let me just see how he learns it. Oh, he's going to explain himself. Okay, but in a sense, it's betikin and it's also not betikin in a sense. So he explains, yistakan begin the kaima koila. It's a stakin. It has a tikkun, has a shleim, is because everything exists because of it. Lo yistakan begin the lo shchiach, but it's not mistaken in the sense that it's not accessible, that we can't connect to it, right? So because of that, it's like the idea. This is like the idea, like that the Rizal says about the tzitzis and the talis, because al pi halacha, al pi straight halacha, really, the tzitzis have to. Well, even something like the tzitzis don't even have to go in shaimis, but whatever. But the tzitzis have to go in shaimis. The tzitzis have a kedusha, but the talis itself doesn't have a kedusha. That's and the Rizal explains the reason why that is the opposite. The reason is because the talis is such a high level of kedusha, because that's the mamish, the eitzim kedusha itself. The tzitzis is just a pashtus of that kedusha. So because of that, it's so inaccessible and so high that we have no shaykhs to, we can't connect to it in any way. So because of that, it's almost like you can throw it in shaim, you can throw it in the garbage, because we can't tap in. We have no access to that kedusha, right? Which is also like similar to the idea that if you ask most Yidden, and there's a lot of Chassidus Maaseh like this. If you ask a lot of Yidden, Friday night is like the most spiritual part of Shabbos, right? But then you have the Friday night is only Chakal Tapich Kaddish, which is only Bechinas Malchus, right? But then Shabbos by day is Bechinas Atika Kaddisha, which is Bechinas Keser. But Shabbos by day, people don't feel that same level of Kaddish they feel Friday night. Shabbos by day is you chill out, you make Kiddush, you have some chulent, and the reason is because that Kaddish is so high that we can't really tap into it, right? And there's many places in the Rizal where it discusses this type of an inyan. So in the sense, Khalila, to say that there's some kind of a tikkun that's missing for atik or for ak or however you want to learn it, but the idea is that we have it's not shchiach to us, we have no connection to it, right? So basically, that's the idea. We need Kavyuchal Hashem we need the Ein Sof, and we need all these madraigas, and we need the Atik and Ak and all these things for the system to exist, and that's why it's Yistakin. But then it's not Yistakin in a sense because we can't comprehend it in any way, or we couldn't originally. just kadistak, and how was it megala itself, which would be in a sense, the tikkun we're talking about, right? Because it's like, it's like what the Rizal says at the beginning of Eitz Chaim about kiviyuchel. It's hard even to talk about these things, but the Rizal says that the Ein Sof created all the oilams because the Ein Sof wanted to be known and wanted to be the Ein Sof wanted there should be an other, because if the Ein Sof is just itself and there's nothing else that exists, then the Ein Sof is just the Ein Sof, and it's almost like stagnant. There's nothing happening. It's just there, right? But so the Ein Sof wanted to reveal itself. And the Ein Sof wanted to create the Oilamas because it wanted there should be an other to experience it, right? And even though it'll never really be an other, like we said before, because everything is Or Ein Sof, it's only going to be an illusion of other, and that eventually manifests in our world. In our worlds, we have our individual identities, and we consider ourselves to be, to have our own lives and our own, our own systems. But really, we're just that, or just the or so concealed that we think we have an independent existence, right? But the idea is that Hashem wanted at least that kind of an other to exist in order to have something to interact with. Like the Rizal says there, he can't be called Elohim, he can't be called God if there's no non-God to relate to. He can't be called Shem Adne, which means a melech, which means a king, if there's no subject. Ein melech b'lei am, right? He can't be called Havaya, which Havaya means existence, if there is anything to perceive that existence. I always compare this like this famous question: if a tree falls in the forest, no one was there to hear it, did it make a sound? The answer is that there were sound waves that came out when that tree fell, but since those sound waves weren't received by anything, so it didn't really make a sound. There's no sound that ever registered in anybody's mind, right? Those sound waves just went levatula, kaviyuchel, right? So kaviyuchel will be the same idea, that there will be like no, it's very hard to talk about these things, but like there would be no tachlis if there wasn't an oilam, right? So the way to make a tikkun for the fact that this atika kedisha is not shchiach and is not, and we have no connection to it, is to create a whole set of oilamis and a whole set of structures that eventually will be able to connect to it, right?
Rabbi, I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this crazy? Something like when parents have children. So like the parents, like a father has a child, and the child is really from him. And when the child grows, it's like I can see with my own children that you have a relationship with your child that you don't have with anybody else. It's almost you yourself are looking at yourself. It's almost what you're saying, right? Mm-hmm. There's an aspect of that in the bria of parents and children. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, right? Because the child is your own koiches. Yeah, it's your own DNA. The child is your own essence.
And you want that child to recognize you, right? Just that's what you're saying in a way. You want the other one, but the child is really you. But you had to create in a way, you had to be partner in the creation too. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Oh, very good. Yeah, that's the idea. So the idea is kadis takens. Now how do we make the kaviyuchel that to fix this problem, that this level of atika has no hisgalus, is to make a hisgalus, to create the oilamas. This apik tashin hoyer, he created 9 lights, right? So this is now going to be, depends on how you want to learn it, right? If you want to learn the way he's learning that it's ak, here we're going to learn, which is looking at the Muslim Midrash, that's going to be the 9 spheres of arich, of the highest parts of in Atzilus, right? So that's going to have its own 10 spheres, or 9, because sometimes you don't count the Malchus. If you want to learn that it's talking about the case of Atzilus itself, talking about Atika Kedisha as it's usually referred to as Arich, then this would mean the other 9 spheres of Atzilus. So either way you want to learn it, there's different meforshim on how to learn this. But basically the idea is, so I had to emanate these emanations, which are going to be the start of the Hisgalas. The Lahat Minai Metikinai, that they sort of like shined out, or they flared out from him and from his that perfection of his. Within the Hoirin Minai Misnaharin of Mislahatan, and these other lights, it's from him, Kiviyuchel, that they are lighting up and flaming, right? Because the idea is, like we said, that it's all one chain, it's all one electric kavyuchel, one electric current that's passing through the whole thing. So they're not independent entities, right? Chas v'shulam to say that. To say, it says like Pasach Eliyui, it says that the kolman the afrish chad menai, something. Anyone who tries to separate one of the spheres and make it an individual entity, or chas v'shulam like a separate conduit or separate God, Khalila, is as if he's over the Azur, as if he's kili afrish bach, he's making different rishiyas in Hashem himself. Right? Each of these spheres are just part of a chain, and they're all connected, and they're all connected to the top. Right? Which is the whole idea that we talked about so many times by the Shirim, about how the Rizal explains about the Zura, right? That the Rizal has a different take on it. And this answers a lot of problems that you find in Sifrei Kabbalah. A lot of times in Sifrei Kabbalah you find stuff like, different I'm not going to call them tefillas, but like bakushas directed to different maluchim. You find this a lot of times in Kabbalah Masas, or these types of ideas, right? Or even the idea that in Al-Pi Kabbalah, the Kabbalah discusses astrology very openly and the existence of astrology and the Kabbalah use astrology, right? And this is according to certain Mefarshim like the Rambam, this is a huge problem. Right, and many Kabbalah Masas things seem very doima to Kishuf, right, and this becomes a whole issue. So we have like even like in Slichas we have the Machnise Rachamim tefillah, right, which is a tefillah which is directed to the Meluchim. We're asking the Machnise Rachamim to bring our tefillahs l'fnai Bal Rachamim, asking the Meluchim to bring our tefillahs to Hashem, and then all the poskim are struggling with it. They have all these problems with it. Some people say you have to take it out of the siddur, right? But according to the Rizal, everything becomes very clear because the Rizal explains that as long as you're aware that there's a system, and as long as you're aware that that system comes from the Ein Sof, you can be grateful to anything in that system, or you can use anything in that system to send up that or to the Ein Sof, right? Because like the Rizal explains, all our tefillahs are directed through Za'anik, right? So our tefillahs are when we say Havaya, right? The Rizal says Havaya in the Torah, and Havaya and tefillah usually represents Za'anpin, right? So who are we davening to, right? So of course we're davening to the Ein Sof. You can't daven to Zer Anpin, but Zer Anpin is that conduit which is bringing that or up. So there, and so to the conduit to bring the or down works both ways, right? So the idea is that Avodah Zura is only if you believe that something is separate from that system and has its own koyach. So this idea of the Israel has a killa and a chimra. The killa is going to be that according to this, you can be grateful to the sun and say thank you to the sun for shining, as long as you remember the Ein Sof is behind that. It's not Avodah Zura, right? Or you can say Amachnise Rachamim, and it's not considered a problem of shittif or whatever. But if so that's the killer side. But the chimra side is if you say thank you even to your boss, right? Or you even say thank you to your friend or to your wife, and you forget that the Ein Sof is the one behind it, then it could be a shiloh of Avodah Zura according to the result. Right, so the idea is you have to keep that in mind that there's a system and everything's part of that system, everything's connected. That's what he says here. It says so then these auras he created, these spheres, they went out and they were mispashet in every direction. In other words, of course, we're not talking about physical space. There's no physical space at this point, but somehow they're filling this kavyuchel, this rachnis dekamukam of Atzilis, kabodzina, like a lamp. Right, but Sina actually literally means a pumpkin, believe it or not. But the lamp is called a boitzina because, like lahav, like the goyim do on Halloween, like they used to actually put candles inside pumpkins to make sure that the candle wouldn't get extinguished or start a fire. So boitzina, which usually means a pumpkin, is also an expression for a lamp. So anyway, so he says it's like a lamp. If you take a lamp and you put it in a dark room, light spreads, as mispashet, light emanates from that lamp and spreads throughout the room, and the whole room lights up, right? These lights that shine out of that lamp, right? If you approach them, you try to analyze their